we got a new administration coming into office, and there's a lot of concern about like, is that sort of thing even going to be allowed? It's a legitimate concern. There's been such a backlash coming from the right against ESG investing, and all things related to that. That there's just it's simply a time of great uncertainty.
One of the things I know you're passionate about, and I care a lot about too, is just environmental sustainability. And when you're a company that introduces new products to the market and you're using new materials, and how do you bring that in, and what advice do you have for other companies that are trying to balance growth and innovation with sustainability?
Yeah, well, I have some interesting views on sustainability that I think are kind of obvious when you look at where we've gone with it. Now, Peak Design utilizes recycled and recyclable materials whenever we can, which is quite a lot. A huge percentage of our textile goods are even post-consumer recycled. A bigger swath are post-industrial, which is not quite as impressive, but still important. We've worked very hard to utilize recycled aluminum. There's always been a big market for recycled aluminum because aluminum is expensive to convert from bauxite into aluminum ore and all that. But I kind of consider many of these things to be sort of table stakes and not the paramount issue. The paramount issue, in my opinion, has not wavered on this one iota. Is the effects? Well, it's climate change. It's climate. It's carbon. It's all of this, right? Like you can look around you, and if you're savvy enough to appreciate, all the things in the physical world are simply some amount of raw material converted into something useful with quite a lot of energy. Different amounts of energy for all these different things, and energy does not really it can come from a wide variety of there's a beauty to all the different potential sources of energy. Obviously, in this world for the past 150 years, we've been using the hell out of fossil fuels. I'm deeply grateful for the transitions that they've brought upon our world to support over 8 billion human souls. Is absolutely astonishing, and I think that humanity really ought to be a little bit more proud of its accomplishments in this way. But also, there is a cost to that, and there needs to remain an urgency around the fact that we need to convert our energy sources to ones that are carbon free and get on with the very, very decades-long work of sucking the additional carbon we've got out of the air. Or, I mean, your other options are changing the amount of radiant energy that comes into the planet with geoengineering type things. These are all potential solutions, but we are simply going to encounter a good deal of complicated problems as our world moves forward. And it's I'm not by no means am I a doomsdayer that thinks that all of humanity is going to be wiped out if we don't put down the natural gas peaker plants at any point. I'm more along hey, let's make things a little bit easier for us down the road by shutting down as many coal plants as we can right now. My God, and let's get the electric cars. Let's go. This is a 30-year effort. It's to make this transition happen. And so my view is, as a business, you got to look for the ways to actually spend the extra money that it takes to work on getting your energy coming from a clean place. That's kind of number one. Obviously, Peak Design has bet very big on the voluntary carbon offset market. That has been a very turbulent market to be a part of. And it has certainly the expression warts and all applies to the voluntary carbon market. But at the end of the day, it's really it is a commitment to spending a certain amount of the money that you're bringing in and trying to, put that back out into the world and foster this transition more quickly.
Do you think your customers, specifically Peak Designs, because everyone's customers are different, but do you think
Yep.
your customers are willing to pay the premium? Not saying that you charge more, but like there at some point there is a cycle. If you're paying for carbon offsets, if you're buying more expensive materials, is that actually accretive to the overall product? Because they're like, this is why I like Peak Design, and so at some point there's a premium that gets baked in somewhere in there. Or do you feel like it's like you at the company side have to kind of eat it all because they don't, the consumer doesn't see it as the reason that it's not a better buying reason for them?
I think it's a great question, and I'll be the first to tell you that I don't factually know the answer. Anecdotally, I hear from all the time from our customers how much they appreciate our environmental stewardship. And so when you think about the overall effect of a brand on the world, like there's just no way that it doesn't play a part. Whether or not, like our kind of budget toward many of these things is governed by our joining of 1% for the planet. And then critically of our pursuit of the climate label, which forces us to measure our carbon footprint and forces us to develop a carbon transition budget. $15 a ton is what Peak Design must spend in an audited fashion on carbon mitigation. And so, that budget of 1% of revenue that it goes towards environmental causes, I certainly think that Peak Design is getting more in return in terms of brand stickiness than that 1%.
That's kind of that key. There's the key metric right there. I would anecdotally agree. One more anecdote to throw onto your pile. Not only in my personal decisions, but we work with other companies like Logitech is really at the forefront of this. They put carbon footprint markings on every product they make now. And they also have goals on having to beat the last generation of the product. So they're consistently driving it down. And their idea is kind of like how food labels have ingredients and calories on them.
Yeah.
They're putting carbon, the tons of CO2 that it took to produce that product. They're putting it there just as an awareness and then an internal target to reduce. And so I know that the former chief marketing officer of Logitech is one of my board members, Heidi, she lives near you. It's very clear that they know that their core customers, especially in like the young millennials and Gen Zs, they care a lot. It's a big part of the brand. So I think it's mostly anecdotal because it's soft evidence, but I think the evidence, even though it's soft versus objective, it's pretty strong.
Yeah, I think that's true. I also, I think it's going to be really interesting to see. If you didn't know, I'm still the co-chair of the board of the Change Climate Project, which is formerly called Climate Neutral. When you're doing a podcast, you're not supposed to date it by giving, like these can be consumed at any time. But here we are. It's November 13th, 2024. And we got a new administration coming into office, and there's a lot of concern about like, is that sort of thing even going to be allowed, right? You've got the green guides that have it really is it's a legitimate concern. There's been such a backlash coming from the right against ESG investing. And all things related to that there's just, it's simply a time of great uncertainty. Just this morning, kind of pursuant to the way that Peak Design can plan around the magnetic architecture in the back of phone cases, I saw that the CEO of ExxonMobil was kind of begging the Trump administration not to pull out of the Paris Agreement. And the main reason is they just want to be able to plan. They don't want to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Totally.
So it's early innings. We'll see what happens with that. But I know that Peak Design is going to stay in the climate fight. I think that a lot of companies are probably going to use this as an opportunity to say, "Ooh, we're we're going to peace out for now and see what happens. But I think that hopefully there will be an opportunity for a kind of a new era of leadership then in the climate movement. But we'll see.
Yeah, both of us being entrepreneurs and business owners, we hear a lot about how we're told that we make decisions based on tax rates and stuff, and I think that's so far from the truth. To really focus on what like the Exxon Mobil guy was saying, we want to know the rules. We want to know the table stakes, and we want to know what we're allowed to do inside those rules and where we can be creative. I think that's what business owners want. They want to know the frameworks that they have to work within, and then they don't want those to change after they've made investments to go in a direction. So, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm pretty confident in what you're saying, that you'd agree with me that like this idea of tax rates and stuff like that is so much lower on the actual decision hierarchy list for business owners than media makes it out to be. Like, it's much more about like, what's the environment we're operating within, and can I please just run my business to the best of my ability?
Yeah. No, I'd sign up for that 100%. The tariffs, I mean, are going to be a really wild thing. You know, if they come in at 60% or 100%, I mean, that means that prices are just simply, it's not like we're printing money over here at Peak Design. I wish that were the case, but it's not. We're actually running a pretty thin margin business at the end of the day, and if those tariff comes in like that, those prices simply need to get passed on to the consumer. That's going to be a very interesting landscape.
It's very inflationary. I'm hoping that since the tariffs haven't really been taken back, that maybe additional tariffs might not necessarily be coming, but it's just conjecture, and I don't follow it that closely. I don't really know, but the tariffs are still in place from the first time around from the administration. So maybe they're like, hey, we're not going to add more inflation by.
I mean, we'll see. Obviously, we veered into some interesting territory here.
Sure, this wasn't on the agenda
of wireless charging. For us, wireless charging, we're making those products in China. And I don't know of. I don't know what the supply chain looks like outside of China to move that elsewhere. I will say this: the tariffs are extremely powerful at getting us to want to manufacture in other countries, which of course Peak Design does. We've been manufacturing in Vietnam for soft goods, Philippines for soft goods, Thailand now. We're trying to move our tripods there, and so we've in Indonesia for soft goods as well.
So Pete, in the electronic space, I mean, just as Vietnam is picking up there. Taiwan has always been pretty strong, and then we're seeing co-locating in Mexico. So not as much primary, but like having a backup ability in case things have to shift. So, just in case that helps you or anyone else that's listening, that's in the decision-making mode of like, if they need to start hedging bets, those are the regions that have some of the infrastructure in place, like the distribution, the talent base, the automation capabilities, to be able to pick up some of that slack. That's what we're seeing from very large companies we work with, down to, kind of single product companies that are, still doing really well, but they're not like multinationals. So hopefully that helps. Hey, Pete, we could probably go for another hour.
I'm sure.
Love your insights. You're building a phenomenal company. It's great to partner with you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I appreciate the innovation you bring to the world, and thank you for sharing that today with me and with anyone that watches.
Jacob, totally my pleasure, man, and same back at you.
Yeah, thanks.
It's been great.